I'm glad you got to hear Tripp and Diane first, because then you can see just how hard my job is. So I am the Director of Marijuana Coordination, which I think I was just about as surprised about as everybody else, that job now exists in the state of Colorado. But let me tell you why, and I'm going to come just at this from the government point of view. You know, Diane hit upon it at the beginning, but to take in for a moment the three challenges that we saw coming in here and why even my position was created. Obviously, we're the first in the world, and that came with no blueprint for how to do this. Now, that's not entirely true. We have prescription drugs, we have alcohol, we have tobacco, we have a lot of lessons that we could pull from, but what lessons fit where and how they fit, we could be wrong and have been wrong about which ones to pull in at what times, and then sometimes there's nothing to pull in. You add that to the fact that, again, we do not have the help of the federal government, and so that means places where there would be our regulatory arm, places where we need them to sign off on something like banking, they're not there, and so we have to be creative in order to get through solutions where we normally would have more enforcement help, or we're being denied the normal sort of regulatory structure we would want. And you add on to that, the second thing that happened to us is that everything was suddenly in the national spotlight. I mean, we would have stakeholder meetings that should be a pretty normal part of government, and we'd have 15 TV cameras there ready for that moment. And that means, obviously there's something good about transparency. It means that you come playing your best game, but it also means you can't really have the most open dialogue because a lot of people are trying to say something in front of a camera instead of trying to figure out how to meet people in between. The third thing I would say, and all these interact obviously with each other in the worst ways possible, is that this is a culturally divisive moment. You know, the governor voted against and campaigned against Amendment 64, and suddenly he's on the side of having to make sure that it's implemented as well as possible. You know, this is our reasonable no and reasonable yes people. I got to tell you that there is a much bigger spectrum of ardent yeses and ardent nos, and you putting them in the room is really difficult to, and really, it really does have a tendency to almost tear Colorado apart at different points. And so those were all the tensions we had coming in. I'll be quick about our solutions going forward because I think it's an experiment still in process that I think we've been open-minded and flexible, and there's been a lot of really good things that have come over the first 22 months. But I think the 5-year check-in is going to be a lot more valuable than the 22-month check-in. So I'll tell you the three things that I think we're most heavily relying upon. The first is open processes. So as Diane and Tripp have mentioned, we had the Amendment 64 task force. We also continue to have working groups to ad nauseum, you know, 3 hours, 5 times a week. The sort of working groups that bring in everyone who possibly has a say in something. And so that's why you do have Diane sitting at a table next to an edibles manufacturer, next to a patient who believes in marijuana. And those people, what we've said time and time again is we don't carry people's water in these meetings. So if you have an opinion, it's not about coming to us and asking us to use that in this meeting. You have to say it in the light of day. Our Department of Revenue has to be able to listen to all of these without having formed its opinion yet. So that has been a really valuable process to us. It's really helped refine a lot of the regulatory structure along the way, and it's really opened up where some holes are far before I think we'd ever reach there. The second thing that I think has really benefited the state of Colorado is we've had debate on the top level. So once every 2 weeks we bring across, there's 10 different departments that deal with the legalization of marijuana. We're talking about from Department of Public Health and Environment, Department of Revenue, Department of Regulatory Agencies, the Agriculture. They all have to come together, and we bring them all into a room together once every 2 weeks, and we debate the biggest issues of the day. And we do that before we've come to an action plan. And I've really found that that helps us give context to when further problems come up. So often, I think, with things that have already been litigated, people come in with their mindsets already pretty made up. This is a rehashing. They know how to reach into the groups that they like. This kind of new debate that we have has really allowed us to be a little bit more flexible and to really listen to each other before we start acting. And the third one, which has probably been the hardest, is have had to create a conversation space where you are able to talk about the legalization of marijuana without saying I am for the legalization of marijuana, which is a dichotomy and a kind of a cognitive dissonance, which is pretty rare in politics. And so what we find when we call a lot of other states is they say, well, my governor didn't vote for it, so we're not going to help to implement it. Well, there are public safety, public health, youth prevention issues that the governor has to be involved in. And so the ability to have a conversation and talk about good government, talking about doing this efficiently and effectively without having to say, and that means I'm pro or anti-marijuana, has been a conversation space we work really hard to try to create with the governor's office. And that comes with it with the ability to make mistakes. So we're going to put it out there. We're doing this first in the world, and so we want to have this conversation. We also want to be able to be wrong in front of a national audience and without the data that we need in order to do this for the first time. So those are the three big lessons I think we've learned along the way.
Thank you.